We're speaking on healing the split in the human psyche through trust in a conscious, loving universe. How many of you folks out there feel like there's a split in your psyche? Like your heart knows one thing, and your mind tells you another, and your culture tells you another, and you guys from Unity know so much about the oneness and the divinity of all things, but it's real hard to live it and act from that place every day, all the time. And have we seen a split in our national psyche? Is there a wonderful Constitution and Declaration of Independence that America has promised to the world that we haven't lived up to? We have yet to live up to. And is there a split in the human psyche throughout the world? Do we all dream of bringing peace on earth and abundance for all, and for all our children and all children of all nations? So we feel that we're going to bring some solutions, some techniques, some tools for living it day to day. So, how did we get here?
All right. So I'm going to speak specifically about me, Andrew. How did I get here on this beautiful stage in this amazing place and having this honor and this privilege of being with you today first?
Sure, and then I will.
I had the great blessing in my life of growing up in South Africa among the Zulus and the monkeys on the edge of the Indian Ocean. It was an amazing place to grow up. And toward the end of my time there, I was a scientist. I was a chemistry professor, mostly organic chemistry. And I had early on had an interest in things spiritual, and left in search of something called cosmic consciousness, which got me to Northern California. I think it was also the summer of love, and you remember that song about California girls? Something like that. Anyway, a number of powerful influences made it inevitable that I was standing on this stage today. And I've been in Unity churches from Manhattan to Maui, and I love it, because this is one of the few churches that is completely aligned with what we're talking about, and it's one of the few places we can present to you, and you know what we're talking about. So in a sense, we're preaching to the choir. But as Connie said, we're going to bring some tools, because so many people have been just working really hard for so long on their spiritual work, their inner practices, their yoga, their meditation, their mantras, their prayers, whatever form it takes. And yet, so many people are still baffled and bewildered, and the reason for that we'll be making clear. It's because we're operating on an outdated operating system, to use a technical metaphor. We are running on beliefs and assumptions that we inherited from the past, from our culture, from our history. And we've never looked at them. We took them on when we were little children, and we simply accepted them. They were given to us by people in positions of authority. We never examined them. So before I left South Africa, I was this science guy, and yet I had a real interest in humanity. And one of the more interesting ways of studying humanity in an academic way is a discipline called social anthropology, where you can go and actually study living cultures, different cultures in different parts of the world. And in the middle of a course on comparative religion, the religion of the indigenous people, the religions or the spiritual understandings of the indigenous peoples of the world. Here I was, a scientist. Here I was knowing a little bit about quantum science, quantum physics, which is one of our subjects today and this afternoon. I find myself immersed in the cosmology of the Australian Aborigines and their beautiful, amazing concept of the dream time. And somewhere in there, I was about 25, and I realized, wait a minute, this is quantum science. This is what my physics professor was talking about. This poetic picture that I am receiving through this book in this academic course from the Australian ancient, beautiful people of that faraway place. I suddenly understood something. And what it was, I understood the interconnectedness of all of us. And I think that's what's driven me since.
And for me, as a young person, I was never satisfied with the paradigm that had phenomena. I'm like, okay, you can't explain that? Well, I'm not basing my life on that paradigm. And I went out looking for what I considered the missing pieces of the paradigm. I witnessed Florence Nightingale and saw what love is possible in the human heart. And I got it, that we are love. We have such capacity for love. Why aren't we operating from that place? And so my life became looking for these missing pieces. That's what occurred to me. We're missing information. The logical mind is operating on misinformation. Where are the missing pieces of the paradigm? I went to Europe looking for it, and it's the same. We came from Europe. Our thinking is from Europe. And what came to me was the Native American worldview, their way of life. I picked up a book in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I got it right there. It was a book of Indian poetry, and I got it. 500 Indian nations have clues to the true nature of the universe, how the universe works. And from that day forward, visionary Native elders started coming into my life. And for 20 years, I've been creating forums for visionary elders to share their understanding of the nature of the universe. It's very aligned with the unity knowledge and knowing, because ultimately there's one truth, and you guys are so connected to it. But the indigenous cosmology brings something very special to the party and to this picture, and that is that it is a conscious, loving universe. It is alive. It loves us. So we just want to proceed and tell you a little bit of history of how we got split from it all, and then how we can reconnect.
So, if we're agreed that there is in fact a split in the human psyche, where did that come from? How did that happen? Was there ever a time when we were not split, when we were actually integrated, when we actually knew what the truth was? Whatever truth means. Truth's a tricky term, but was there ever a time? And I would say yes. I would say that back in our early history, there was a time when we perceived the world as alive, as spirit, as totally integrated. We didn't go to church on Sundays because every day there was no separation between the secular and the spiritual. We simply knew that everything, every entity was part of a single living, breathing, evolving universe. We knew that. We may not have had words for it, but we intuited that. I grew up being told that the most primitive religion on the planet was this phenomenon that very backward people had called animism. Animism, which means simply that everything is alive. The rocks, the trees, the moon, the galaxies, the stars, everything is alive, not just mammals and birds and so on. Everything breathes and is conscious and is alive. Guess what? Quantum science is now acknowledging that. I'm aware of two quantum scientists who have written books titled The Conscious Universe. I've spoken to both of those men and I've asked them the same question. You wrote a book called The Conscious Universe. Does that mean the universe is alive? And they both looked at me with the same sort of funny look and they said, of course. That's interesting. That's not what I grew up with in my scientific training. Okay, so we do live in a living universe. We live in a conscious universe. This is part of the solution because I was raised to believe that the universe was a mechanical, it was a machine. It was a grand machine. And the only alternative to that viewpoint was the cosmology that was presented by the religions of the world, which was, oh, no, that's not true. What is true is that somewhere far away there's a judgmental God. It's called the distant patriarch view. What would we choose? Distant patriarch or giant lifeless machine? I think there's a third possibility. And that third possibility is what we are presented, what we are presenting today. And what we're actually doing is through indigenous cosmology, the indigenous understanding, and through quantum science, we are coming full circle back to what perhaps the animists, those primitive people, what does the word primitive mean? It means, what does prime mean? First. The first people, the original vision. Maybe they had it all along, and when somebody showed up and said, no, that's not right, you've got to go to this church, or you've got to give all of that up because that's nonsense, and you've just got to take the Newtonian, Cartesian viewpoint. So what has happened as a result of this sort of messy exploration of humanity is that we have ended up split. I see an encouraging thing going on out in the world. People are no longer religious in the sense of belonging to I grew up in the Anglican Church, and then there was the Catholic Church, and then there were all these other churches, and then there was the synagogue, and there was the mosque, and so on. People now are defining themselves as spiritual but not religious. And here's something to ponder. I think there's an awful lot of people out there who are religious but not spiritual. Think about ISIS. What could be more religious than interpreting the Quran in such a way that you behave and feel authorized, or in fact required to behave in certain atrocious ways? That, I would say, is religious but not spiritual. I'm very encouraged to see that coming around.
And now we feel this is a time of convergence, of bringing things back together that were split apart. And specifically, bringing the indigenous way of knowing to the table, which is the unity way of knowing, but as I said, bigger. And this convergence, we are seeing it in the unity way. We just came from the unity convention. We're calling it convergence emergence, because unity is becoming that combination of the heart and the mind, and just bringing love forward. I couldn't believe it, what I experienced there during that 5 days. And we just spoke at a place in Sedona at an Eagle Quetzal Condor conference, where it's about bringing the Americas, the people of the Americas together. It's a huge process of bringing the native people and the white people together. There's such wounds and such separation of thinking. And the native people are realizing that the white people are waking up. And this is what we're considering is the third great synthesis of this coming together, because in America, in the first 50 years of our country, the Mayflower Pilgrims and the Wampanoag Indians lived in peace and friendship for 50 years. It's a situation that's shrouded in misconception and misunderstanding. We're actually doing a big project on that, because it was actually that synthesis of those two cultures that gave birth to the American mind, the American spirit, and American democracy. It's really astounding. And the next great synthesis was the time of the Constitutional Convention. It brought in the Iroquois Great Law. I don't know how many of you know that, but it was a synthesis of European thinking and Native thinking. And that's the basis of our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. So now is the time to bring together all the pieces of the puzzle. Now that we have the internet, the World Wide Web, we can bring all of humanity together to bring a picture no one has ever seen before. Something completely new is emerging. And there are many movements here in America and worldwide of this oneness, of this emergent process of giving birth to something that's never been here. And what I came to understand, because I knew there was something that was coming that's never been here, and after a sweat lodge, Wallace Black Elk, one of the great Lakota elders, said, "Man has doubted the Creator since the beginning, and that doubt has plagued him." And at that moment, I got it. What's coming? Trust. Wow. It's so baggageless, so clean, so easy. We have never totally trusted the Creator. We've never totally trusted our hearts. We've never walked over that line from doubt into total trust. And it's actually a frequency thing. What we've figured out is it's actually a frequency thing. It's not a judgment. It's simply, okay, what level are you vibrating at? Are we vibrating at? And what determines that? We say there are elements that are our requests to this conscious, loving universe, and they are also elements that determine our frequency. Okay? So there's two ways of looking at what we feel is key for understanding about the nature of the universe. That it is a conscious, loving universe. It responds to our requests. Once we understand that, we will shift what we do, what we think, and what are our requests. Our requests are, and this is something we're putting on the table, that before we incarnated, we had an overarching request when we incarnated. We said, I'm going to planet Earth in the physical body, and I am going to bring a gift, I'm going to have a purpose, and I'm going to go on my journey to wholeness. So conscious, loving universe, you get to take me on that journey, whatever it is. That's what I want. That is my request to the universe. And then we come in and we incarnate into these bodies, into these separate bodies, into these families for whatever lessons we came for this journey to wholeness, whatever they may be. And from our perspective, there is only love, absolutely. So we incarnated into this family, and whatever it is happened for us, not to us. Once we understand this nature of the universe that is unconditional love, it gives us so much. It loves us so much that it gives us everything we ask for. What did we ask for? Did we ask for betrayal, abandonment, abuse, those things that we feel the victim of? Yes, we had to have. That's all there is love and free will. And the loving universe responding to us. So we want to put that on the table, and it's really a new definition of unconditional love. Unconditional love isn't kindness all the time, isn't what we consider romantic love and sweetness. It is, in fact, loves us so much that it gives us what we ask for on our journey to wholeness, so that we will bring our true gift, our true purpose. So we also have the 7 A's of consciousness.
Well, that's what we're going to wrap it up with. So just keep that in mind, the 7 A's. What on earth could that be? So what we're talking about here is kind of a 60s thing in a way. I'm a 60s guy. And remember that one about picking up good vibrations? That was another one of the Beach Boys songs, right? We all know what that means. And when we use the phrase the trust frequency, we're really talking about that good, literally a good vibration. What does that mean? It's actually a spiritual state. Anybody here ever been in love? I hear some affirmative chuckles. Yeah. When we're in love, it's a magical state where somehow the world is transformed, where somehow everything works. The parking spot in Manhattan suddenly shows up. That would be impossible, but you're in love, and it works. That's a different reality. Anybody here ever been in fear or anxiety? Yeah. What happens then when you come into Manhattan and try to find parking? Good luck, right? We know the difference. We very definitely know the difference. So the point I am making is that knowing the difference, we have the capacity to change our frequency, to adjust our frequency, to notice when, for example, when we're in fear. Wow, I'm really nervous about this upcoming court hearing, or anything like that. Or how on earth are we going to pay the mortgage or the rent this month? Almost all of us have those kinds of concerns. I wake up in the middle of the night and I remind myself with 4 words. I just say, trust the loving universe. And somehow that is my personal reminder to be back in the trust frequency where magically everything works out every time.
So we have the 7 A's of consciousness.
She's trying to get me to go right there.
Right.
Okay.
It's been 20 minutes.
So point being, she brought up Connie
keep you guys too long.
You will have noticed that Connie brought up the C word, and I think we've got about another 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think are we okay? Anybody going to pull the plug on us?
Yeah.
Okay. So consciousness. What is that? This entire talk and this entire experience of coming to unity today for everyone here has to do with consciousness. We are conscious beings showing up to enhance our consciousness, to remember the consciousness of which we are a part, that we call the conscious, loving universe. Now, consciousness is a term that's really baffled science, right? Science can't go there. If you ask a physicist, talk about consciousness, they just look at you blankly. No, you've got to go talk to your minister at the church. Consciousness is not something physics can approach. If you go to your dictionary, it has a single word, awareness. And note, awareness begins with the letter A, and Connie just mentioned the 7 A's. So what we ended up doing was saying, okay, what is consciousness? It's something we all experience from the beginning, but nobody seems to have figured out what it is or how to describe it or even how to use it. So we came up with 7 words, 7 attributes of consciousness, each of which coincidentally begins with the letter A. The first attribute is awareness.
Well, we have a sentence that we put all 7 A's in, and that sentence is, with expanded awareness and accurate assumptions.
Assumptions.
We choose our attitude.
Attitude.
We consciously direct our attention.
Attention.
We align with our highest inner promptings.
Alignment.
With committed action.
Action.
Allowing the conscious, loving universe to manifest beyond our wildest dreams. Okay? And that will bring us to our final thing we want to bring to you, and that is that in the trust frequency, it is another dimension. It is a place we can get to if we walk in that vibratory level. We pay attention to our 7 A's, and we walk in total trust. It's called heaven. It's called nirvana, and we can get there. We don't have to die to get to heaven. And the laws in the frequencies are different. The laws that we see as immutable here are immutable in this frequency. We've made up systems and we make our choices based on the man-made laws of this frequency. But it's not the only game in town. As you've witnessed with your unity understandings, you understand that because you know that things flow to you that you need and more than you need. And so what we want to bring to you is that there's more beauty, balance, abundance, joy in this trust frequency than we can fathom. So the current level of understanding is tell the universe your intent, okay? We can do that, and the unified field will show up for us. But there's something more for us than we can fathom. So we want to get out of the way, because as soon as we put an intent, a desire onto it, it has to respond to that. And me personally, I don't want that. I don't want my little pea brain telling the universe what is best for me. I want the universe to give me more than I can fathom, what it wants for me. So we'll close with a quote from Henry David Thoreau, the wonderful transcendentalist author. And this was a key to our understanding of this frequency situation. And that is in the conclusion to Walden, he says, "I learned this, at least by my experiment, that when one walks confidently in the direction of his dreams, he will pass a certain boundary. He will experience a success unexpected in common hours. The laws that apply to him will be expanded, or new laws will be made in his favor, and he will live with the license of a higher order of beings."
Thank you.
Thank you.